Round 17 of the 2025 AFL season is coming up this weekend. We're going to preview all 9 matches. That's right. Bye rounds are done. 9 matches this weekend. Hopefully, we'll find you all 9 winners. This is the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome on in to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 45 of season 2025. We're flying through this season. It's round 17 and we're going to be previewing all 9 matches coming up this weekend. That is right, bye rounds are done. We've got 9 matches this weekend. Finally, after some multiple weeks of some interesting matches in terms of not being that many great ones. And to be honest, maybe we're going to cop that again this weekend. It's 9 matches though coming our way. It's the top 9 teams playing the bottom 9 teams, which is a weird little quinky-dink in the scheduling. But hopefully we can find you some winners. Before we jump into the games, don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button depending what platform you're watching this on. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to jump in the comments below and let me know who you think will win this weekend. Other than that, let's jump into football because that's what we're all here for. And we're starting on Thursday night. We're heading to Marvel Stadium for the centenary game for the North Melbourne Kangaroos as they host the Western Bulldogs. It's 16th on the ladder, the 7th on the ladder. I mean, on paper, you have to think this is going one way and one way only based on what we saw last week. Teams not quite announced for this. They will be announced very shortly, but as of recording, not live. They will be live by the time this video goes up. A look at these two teams' recent form. North Melbourne had been playing okay. They're 2-3 over the last 5 weeks, but last week was a really bad one. The weeks before that were pretty good. Beat Carlton, just lost to Freo over in the West, beat West Coast, and before that lost to Collingwood after a fourth quarter fade out. Whereas the Bulldogs, they're flying. Things are going well for them. They came back from the bye, lost to Hawthorn, but after that, they've beat St Kilda, Richmond, and Sydney last week in what was game of the round last weekend. So they're 3-2 over the last 5 weeks. They're 7th on the ladder, 9-6. Things are going pretty well overall for the Doggies. Kangaroos probably about where we expected them at the start of the year. I thought we might get a little bit more, but they're not too far from where we thought. I look at the numbers. Offensively, obviously the Bulldogs are a way better team, but even defensively, the Bulldogs have been playing really well this year. I don't see how this North Melbourne defence is going to hold up to this Bulldogs onslaught. The best part of the Bulldogs game is their attacking style, their attacking full stop, and probably the Kangaroos' worst part of their game is their ability to defend. So that's going to be a major issue, I think. Head-to-head record, 9-1 in favour of the Bulldogs over the last 10, and they've won their last 8. The last time the Kangaroos beat the Bulldogs was 2019, round 10. So it's been a while. There's been some close-ish games in that period, but there's also been a couple floggings. Like 2020 was 50, 2021 was 120 points, and then even last year in round 23 when they met, it was almost 100 points. They did meet in round 1 of this year and the Doggies only won it by 16 points. It was a pretty good effort from Kangaroos, but if you think back to that day, that Bulldogs team didn't have Bontempelli. They were still carrying quite a few injuries. I mean, they still are at times, but yeah, they've certainly got, I think, better since then, the Bulldogs. Pretty much every stat category I can see them winning. Kangaroos are pretty good in the clearance game, but that's also a really big strength for the Doggies, so you'd imagine that's going to go the way of the Dogs. They market more, they have more of the football, they certainly go forward a lot more, they pretty much do every single thing in a game of football better than Kangaroos, just about. So on paper, it looks like it's going to be a really tough night for the Kangaroos. It is their celebration night, so that will maybe help them, but if we think back earlier this year, Collingwood ruined the Bulldogs centenary party, so maybe, just maybe, North Melbourne the Bulldogs will be looking for a little bit of revenge on a different team by ruining a different party. We'll see if that plays out. Overall, it's hard to find ways that Kangaroos win this. Based on what we saw last week, they weren't great against Hawthorn. I was at that game, and it was very one-way traffic. Bulldogs have a stronger midfield. They have a stronger forward line. Their back line's not terribly great, but the Kangaroos' forward line isn't playing that special either. Larky did kick 5 goals last weekend, so he did play okay. But how do they stop Sam Darcy? Is probably one of the big issues, but even if you stop him, Norton's been playing really well as that second fiddle, and all the midfielders get forward for goals, and also their smalls. Joel Frazier got popped up for 3 goals in the third quarter last week. It's very difficult to stop this Bulldogs team from scoring. It has been for years, but this year especially, and Marvel Stadium even more so. They just play that ground really well, so I would imagine this is going to be a really tough night for Kangaroos. I don't think there's too much else to say about this game. As we always do, tips will be at the end of the video, so you can pretty much guess who I'm tipping from what we've said there, but we will do full tips at the end of this episode. Jumping into the second game, we've got a double header it's not really a double header, 2 games on the same time on Friday night. This one starts at 7:20 Australian Eastern Time. It's Carlton, Collingwood, 11th on the ladder versus 1st on the ladder at the exact same time. Over in the West, starting exactly 1 hour later, is the other game, which is West Coast GWS. So we'll get to that one in a second. We'll start with Carlton v Collingwood. Traditional rivals, MCG. 2 teams in very different spots so far this year. Collingwood absolutely cruising, flying. Things couldn't be going much better for them. Granted, their last couple, probably 3 wins, have not been spectacularly great, but they've been getting the job done. Whereas for Carlton, it's been the exact opposite. A few weeks ago, they were making a charge for finals. They'd beaten Essendon, and then they beat West Coast quite comfortably over in the West, and things were looking like maybe they were shaping up for a little run into the finals. They were only a game and a half or so out, or maybe even less than that, 2 games outside of the 8, with some easy-ish games coming up based on paper, as easy as football games get. Certainly not easy, nothing's easy. But losing to North Melbourne pretty much put that to bed, and then followed it up with a 50-point loss last weekend to Port Adelaide. So they get an 8-day break from that game, which is certainly needed for them, but they certainly will need to play a lot better football. So they're 2-3 over the last 5. They're 6 wins, 9 losses for the season. Still technically within reach of playing finals, but they would need to win just about every game from here on out. Maybe could afford 1 loss if they got really lucky with other results. Meanwhile, Collingwood, they're sitting first on the ladder. They're 5-0 in the last 5. They're 12-1 from the last 13. So things are very much looking Collingwood's favour in regards to that. A look at the last 10 matches between these 2 teams. Collingwood have a really good record. 8 wins, 2 losses in the last 10 for Collingwood. Their last loss, round 20, 2023, which was as they were in a very similar spot to they are right now, sitting top of the ladder with a handful of games to go. There's a few more, obviously, this year. It's round 17. But in the run home, they were sitting top of the ladder. They met each other, and Carlton knocked them off that day by 17 points in a huge win for the Blues. 2021... round 18 was the other time in the last 10 that these 2 met that Carlton won, and that was by 30-odd points. But other than that, it's been Collingwood. They won by 17 points earlier this year in a low-scoring, inaccurate game from both teams. Round 21 last year, Collingwood won by 3 points. That was Scotty Pendlebury's 400th. And earlier last year, they only won by 6 points, and that was also a memorable game because Nick Dacos kicked that winner from the boundary with less than a couple minutes to go. So Collingwood certainly have the better record over recent times. You look at the numbers this year, Collingwood certainly have the better numbers. There is always that factor, though. Carlton will play well. They will get going for a big game like this. The heat's been on them for the last 2 weeks. You've got to think that their star players are going to stand up in this one. And I don't see it being an easy contest for Collingwood. You look, offensively numbers, Collingwood are certainly better than Carlton's offence. Carlton's defence this year has been really quite good, so that should be a good little matchup, I think. How Collingwood's attacking side of the game goes against the Carlton Blues defence. I think that will be a fascinating watch to this game. The thing that I think is going to be a big issue for Carlton, based on what we've seen so far, is their ability to score against this Collingwood team. They've really struggled most of this season to put scores on the board. You look at their last 5 weeks, they've gone 82, 70, 86, 73 and 60, which is not great numbers, especially when you consider that 4 of those 5 games are against teams that are not in the 8. Well, actually, all 5 of them aren't in the 8, but one of them is in 9th and genuinely a contender for finals, but the other 4 are not. So they're not scoring well against teams that are not playing in finals. And that's their biggest issue right now, I think, is they just cannot find a way to score. And this Collingwood defence has been really good at stopping opposition from scoring. Number 1 defence in the competition so far this year. So that's going to be a concern for them. You look at where Carlton could possibly win this game. They are really good in the contested football, clearances. That is their go-to. They are really good in both of those areas. And Collingwood are not strong in those areas. So we'll be looking at Carlton dominating clearances, probably dominating contested football in this game. The thing that will be the difference maker will be Collingwood's pressure and their ability to cause turnovers, because that's what they have done through most of this season really well, is causing turnovers, getting the ball back and turning it into scores. They have pretty good forward efficiency. They have decent accuracy in front of goal, and they certainly make teams pay when they don't look after the ball. So I think that is probably, if Carlton can look after the ball, they will go a long way to giving themselves a chance in this game. It's going to be, because they will get their hands on the ball a lot, certainly out of the contest, you would imagine. I don't think there's too much else to go on in this game. It should be a fascinating watch. Obviously, a lot of heat on Carlton, on their board, on Vossi, on all their players right now. So I'm expecting to see them stand up in this game. Whether that happens or not, I guess we'll find out on Friday night. We'll jump into the next game. We're heading west. West Coast at GWS, another game on Friday night. It's 18th on the ladder versus 9th on the ladder. It is at Optus Stadium, obviously. 8:20pm kickoff in the Australian Eastern Time Zone, which is 6:20 over in the West. Fascinating game again, just because the Giants have dropped out of the 8. They probably need this win more than they were probably expecting to need it. They should win. They should absolutely win. But strange things sometimes happen in football. Over the last 5 weeks, West Coast 0-5. They're 1-14 on the season. Things not going great for them. They played pretty well, in all honesty, against top of the ladder Collingwood in Melbourne last Saturday night. They showed some really good signs in that game. They just lacked a little bit of the class and the finishing ability that Collingwood have. Otherwise, they may have had a chance there. The week before, they were okay against Carlton. They certainly weren't anything great. Before that, they should have probably beat North Melbourne, but wasted their day with some poor kicking. Geelong smacked them, and Adelaide smacked them the 2 weeks before that. On the other side of the fence, GWS have hit a little bit of form over recent weeks. They're 4-1 over the last 5 weeks, and their one loss was against a team not in the 8, whereas the last 2 weeks they've beaten both Queensland sides, who are both firmly inside the top 8 in Brisbane and Gold Coast. Gets them to 9-6 on the season. They're right there. I mean, it's very close between 2nd and 9th on the ladder. Is very congested at the moment. They're still well and truly in the hunt for top 4. This is a really good opportunity for them to get that boost on percentage, because that At the moment, their percentage is not fantastic and probably something that needs a little bit of work. They're sitting at a percentage of 107.6. Not terrible. It's about level with Fremantle, who are one game ahead of them. But outside of that, every other team in the top 8 and are well above them in percentage by about 10 points outside of Brisbane. But they have a draw, so percentage probably doesn't matter too much for them. So I think they really need to use this game here as an opportunity to boost that percentage and give themselves a chance on jumping a couple teams. You look at the record between these two teams over the recent years, it's 5-5, so not fantastic for either side. However, GWS have won 4 of the last 5, and most of them reasonably comfortably. They won by 60 points round 2 last year. They met in round 4 this year, and they won by 80 points. The last time West Coast won was round 2 2023 when they won by 19 points, which that was an upset. GWS had a bit of a rough start 2023, but they got themselves going eventually. You look across the board and it's hard to find places that West Coast win this game. The attacking of GWS has been really good. Their ball movement from the backline is typically pretty good. That's how they score a lot of points, is from backline transition. The issue here, I think, is their defense is probably underperforming, in all honesty. They have a really good defense. They have some good key defenders. They have some good general defenders. But overall, they're probably conceding a little bit more than they would like overall. Maybe not so much over the last couple of weeks, but across the length of the season. But this West Coast team is equally bad forward and back overall so far this year. So this is a good opportunity to see if GWS can put them away. And, I mean, they should. This will be a fascinating game in a lot of ways, I think, because both teams not great at clearances. 2 of the worst teams in the AFL clearances and contested football. One of the teams has to win it. They both also really struggle at the inside 50 game. GWS use that forward efficiency and their ability to score when going forward as a reason why they win games, kicking straight in front of goal as well. They're all factors why GWS win, because they don't dominate inside 50s, they don't dominate contested football. They give oppositions a chance and then they bounce it. And that's their way of winning games. So I think this will be interesting to see how that matches up here, how the teams play this one, whether GWS come out and try and actually beat a team in that contested football and clearance game. I think it would be handy for them to show that ability that they can beat teams, especially teams that are not as good as them in that area. I think that's everything we've got. Obviously, the big news out of West Coast this week was Dom Sheed announcing his retirement. Obviously, fantastic career from him. Everyone remembers the grand final moment that he had, and probably never will forget that. But unfortunately for him, he's had to retire. Fantastic career, no doubt about it. 2 of their star players have had to retire this year, which is not great for them, but an opportunity for them to develop some more young players. Moving on to Saturday football, and we head to Marvel Stadium. There's a double header at Marvel Stadium happening again this Saturday for the second time this season. And we start with Essendon Gold Coast, 13th versus 8th on the ladder this year. Big game for the Suns. Sorry, most people probably will remember earlier this season the Suns going down to the Tigers at Marvel Stadium. So there's just a little bit of a bogey in their minds about that day. I can't see it affecting them. This Bombers team have probably outperformed themselves most of this season so far, but this is going to be a tough ask. They've got a lot of injuries. I believe they're getting some players back this week, but it's just really hard to see the Bombers getting up, even though it is at Marvel Stadium. Recent form of both teams, Essendon have lost their last 4. Those against 3 of them against finals teams. They've lost to Brisbane, Carlton, Geelong and Fremantle. Whereas on the other side of the fence, Gold Coast had lost 3 in a row before they won last week against Melbourne. This is a really good chance for the Suns to get an away win and to hypothetically get their season really going, because they're sitting 8th. They have played 1 less game than every team above them, so they certainly still have plenty of opportunity to move up and really threaten that top 4. But they can't lose games like this. If they want to finish top 4, they cannot lose a game like this. Record between these two teams was really, really favourable for the Bombers up until last year. They'd won 7 of the previous 8, with one of those being a draw in 2020. But last year, the Gold Coast Suns got them both times. First up on the Gold Coast in round 12, they beat them by 11 points. And then in round 22, I think it was at the MCG, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been Marvel, though. I can't remember, to be honest. The Suns won it by a point with a kick after the siren. So, it was certainly a favourable matchup for the Bombers up until last year. Offensively, defensively, both areas of the ground, Gold Coast look a lot better than the Bombers this year. On numbers, it makes sense. The Bombers have copped a lot of injuries. They're a young team. So you kind of accept that. But in this one, you think Gold Coast are going to dominate that territory battle. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for the Bombers to be able to slow this offense down. Because when Gold Coast are flying, they are very hard to slow down. They bounce the ball both ends of the ground very fast at times, and I think this will be a factor here. Their clearances are really good. Their contested football's good. Inside 50 numbers good. Pretty much across the board, they're just slightly ahead of the Bombers in pretty much every facet of the game, and that makes you think that they're going to find it very difficult, the Bombers, to win this game. Not impossible, absolutely not impossible, but it's going to be difficult. You have to think that Gold Coast would have learnt from their mistake against Richmond earlier this year and won't make that same mistake here. I believe they have played at Marvel since then. I think they played St Kilda there about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, however many weeks ago that was. It's like 6 weeks ago now, apparently. How time flies. So they have had a win there since, but once again, it wasn't the most impressive game or win of their season. But yeah, that's that game. I don't think there's too much else to say about it. It looks one-way traffic, but not as bad as the next one. We head down the highway to GMHBA Stadium, and it's 4th on the ladder Geelong, the 17th on the ladder Richmond. You would have to think that this is a flogging on the cards. Surely. Based on everything we know about both of these teams, it has to be a big margin. They're going to be meeting at 4:15. This game will kick off Australian Eastern Standard Time. Obviously, Cats sitting 10-5 on the year, 4-5 over the last 5. They did lose their last match before their bye. They lost to Brisbane, by 41 points, but they kicked horribly that day. Should have been a lot closer and more competitive in that game, but they just weren't. Other than that, their form's really good. They can score very highly, which is the big issue, I think, here for Richmond. They can occasionally concede reasonably high scores as well. Like the Doggies got 113 against them 5 weeks ago. But overall, the rest of the weeks over the last 4 weeks, they haven't conceded too much. Obviously 92 against Brisbane, but 56 against the Bombers, 37 against Gold Coast, and 73 against the Eagles. You just think that they're going to score big here against Richmond, who also do concede big scores. Their last 2 games, they've conceded 21 goals against the Bulldogs and 18 against the Crows. I just don't see a way they stop this Geelong team from kicking roughly 20 goals or more, in all honesty. We haven't had a 100-point game yet this season. Nobody has entered the 100-point club. This might be a chance. The Cats, do love to bury a team. And the Tigers, over the last few weeks, have looked a little bit less competitive than they did earlier this season. It's been a long time since their last win. Things not looking great. I just don't see where they get a win at the moment, and this certainly isn't one of them. Looking at the history of these 2 teams, it's pretty even, which is kind of understandable when you consider how good Richmond were over that 2017-2020 period. Obviously, they met in the 2020 grand final, which Richmond won. But since that point, it's been 4 wins to Geelong, just the 1 for the Tigers. So before that, it was basically the exact opposites. But you'd have to think that Geelong continue that here. They won by 30 points last year. The year before, Richmond actually did beat them in 2023. Completely different Richmond team then, though. 2022, 3-point winner to Geelong. 2021, pardon me, Geelong won both of them quite comfortably. 40 points and 60 points. So, most things tell you Geelong win this one. Offensively, obviously way better. Geelong's not weak defensively, just probably not as strong as their offense. Whereas Richmond's all round the ground kind of struggles. It should be a big margin. If we're going to see a 100-point game this season, this is probably as likely as you're going to see, I think. I don't have too much else to say about this game. I think it's just going to be one-way traffic for most of it. Is there a way that Richmond are competitive? I don't think for 4 quarters. I think maybe for the first quarter we could see it being within a couple goals possibly if Geelong starts slowly, but I can't see a world where this game goes to half-time and it's not already in the books. Moving on to Saturday night, we've got 2 games happening this Saturday night. First one is Brisbane Port Adelaide up at the Gabba, 7:35 kickoff. Should be a cracker, in all honesty. This is possibly as good of a game we're going to get this weekend. I know I say cracker and everyone's probably going to say you're crazy. But I think this is the best chance we've got of getting a good game this weekend. I honestly do. I might be crazy. I definitely am crazy. But in terms of good games, it's probably second best match of the round, to be honest, behind the Fremantle Sydney game of Sunday. Who wins it? You'd have to think Brisbane do based on where they're at. Both teams are up second on the ladder versus 10th on the ladder. Brisbane just occasionally showing some little hiccups. They're coming off the bye, which is always a little bit of a concern. Some teams come off the bye really well, others do not. I don't think it will affect Brisbane here. They've had an overall pretty solid 5-week block, 3 wins, 2 losses. 2 losses against 2 final contending team, Adelaide and GWS. That GWS one was a bit disappointing, I think, for them. They don't have the best record at the Gabba this year either, which is the one thing that's probably costing them that top spot or being in contention with Collingwood in the top spot, is they've lost multiple games at the Gabba. But they've also, in that time, beaten Geelong and Hawthorn. Both of them in Victoria. So they're having a weird old season, in all honesty, Brisbane. And Port Adelaide, probably similar kind of story in a lot of ways. 3-2 over the last 5 weeks as well. They looked really good out of the bye, beating both GWS and Melbourne quite comfortably. But then they fell to Sydney in a really disappointing game that almost effectively beat them for the season, but it hasn't. It hasn't just yet, because then they came out and beat Carlton by 50 points which I know Carlton are not playing that great of football, but maybe, just maybe, that's a spark. If they want to play finals, they need to win these sort of games. They need to win every game just about. They can probably afford one loss maybe, but they can't afford to be losing this one to the Brisbane Lions if they want to play finals. It's a long way to go before the final series. I don't think they're good enough based on what we've seen this year. But their best, the difference between their best and worst this year is by far the most in the AFL, I think, this season. Their worst is absolutely atrocious. What they've put up in a few games this year looks like a bottom 4 team. But then their best is the exact opposite. What they did to Hawthorn in that first half, what they did to GWS, what they've done to multiple teams at times this season has suggested they are good enough, but their worst is bad. So I don't know what to make of that. I think Brisbane have to win this just based on what we've seen. But coming out of the bye, I've just got this sneaky little feeling that Port Adelaide might be very competitive and might take this one right to the line. We'll see. I could be completely wrong. If we look at the history of the matchup, Brisbane have absolutely smoked them the last 2 times. 2023 qualifying final, they won by 50-odd points. And then last year they met in round 15, and that was an absolute schmozzle. Brisbane won it by 80 points, or 79 points I think it was. Before that, Brisbane still have a pretty solid record. They've won 7 of the last 8 between these two teams. Port Adelaide did win the 2 before that. So overall, Brisbane have a better record against Port Adelaide. It's at the Gabba. They should be fresh. There's a lot of things saying that Brisbane should be just too strong in this game. Port Adelaide have really struggled in the contest this year. They've struggled at clearance game this year. They've struggled at efficiency, at accuracy, at looking after the football. They're just across the ground really struggling. Everything with the ball has not looked great. When they don't have the ball, they look solid. Like, not great, but certainly on par with most teams. But their work with the ball at times looks very poor. Whereas Brisbane are really good defensively and pretty solid attacking as well. Most things suggest Brisbane will win this. I'm not confident enough to say they'll definitely win, though. I just have this feeling that Port Adelaide are going to give us that one more crack this season. I could be completely wrong, but I just feel like they're going to give us one more crack at making finals. We'll see how that plays out. We'll jump into the other Saturday night game. Arguably one of the more interesting games this weekend. It's St Kilda Hawthorn. It's at Marvel Stadium. And the reason this is interesting is because it's at Marvel Stadium. Hawthorn are absolutely the better team, in a lot better form. But St Kilda play Marvel better than most. And Hawthorn, they don't play Marvel Stadium too often. They're not terrible there, but they haven't played that many games over recent years at Marvel Stadium. So I just feel like that certainly tightens it up a little bit. But from what we've seen recently, Hawthorn have to win this. Record over the last 5 weeks, St Kilda 1 win, 4 losses. That 1 win was a really good one, but other than that, they've played 4 teams that are all competing for finals and lost to them all. Hawthorn on the other side of the fence, they've won their last 3 after a little shaky period there where they lost to Brisbane and Collingwood. They've turned it around. They beat 2 finalists in a row in the Bulldogs and Adelaide, and then followed it up last weekend down in Tassie, out of the bye, winning by 85 points in an absolute demolition job of the Kangaroos. So their form couldn't be going any better. They're on the way up. Things are going great. St Kilda, they've had some peaks and troughs this season. I don't think last week was bad. I don't think the game against Collingwood was bad. They've been absolutely pumped by the Bulldogs twice this year. But this is going to be tough. I think the fact that it's at Marvel certainly tightens this game up a little bit. Whether it tightens it up enough for St Kilda to be genuinely competitive in this and to give this a shake, I guess we'll see. we finally saw a Hawthorn team attack quite well last weekend. Like, up until that point, they'd scored pretty low for the previous month. They'd gone 60, 56, 81, 47 across the previous 4 weeks before scoring 150 last week. Defensively, overall, they're pretty good though. The last 3 weeks against them, it's been 59, 44, 65. So some low scoring against them, which has been really positive in favour of Hawthorn. But it's just been that attack up until last week that had kind of not been dominating. You look at the stat sheet, offensively, defensively, Hawthorn are the better team. They've got not the greatest record against St Kilda, just 4-6 over the last 10. But for the most part of that period, St Kilda were the better team out of these two. They've always been sitting around the 8, whereas Hawthorn, up until last year, had been kind of struggling. And, I mean, they met twice last year. They only met once last year, and Hawthorn won it by only 5 points. That was down in Tassie in a low-scoring game. 2023 is when they met twice. St Kilda won the second one. Hawthorn won the first one. Before that, it was 5 in a row to St Kilda. So they're kind of starting to even it up here, and you'd think that that would continue. It is at Marvel Stadium, though, so that's always in your mind. Contested footy battle will probably be pretty even. St Kilda might win the clearance game here, in all honesty, but Hawthorn will dominate possession, you'd think. They'll dominate territory battle. The thing that will keep St Kilda in this game, I think, is their ability just to play Marvel really well. They run the ball, they can slow it down when they need to, and they can really turn it into a dogfight. I don't know if that's the best way to beat Hawthorn, but I think the best way, you don't want Hawthorn being out in the open. You don't want them getting over the back. You don't want them running and carrying, because that is how teams destroy, how Hawthorn destroys teams. When they get open football, when they can get it over the back, when they can use their leg speed, it's good night. You can't beat them. So St Kilda will turn this into an absolute dogfight, you think. Think what they did to Gold Coast last season at Marvel. I think that's sort of what we're going to see here. They're going to try and take everything out of this game and just turn it into an absolute contested football game, and hope that they can stay with them and not let them get over the back and score. That's the only way I see St Kilda genuinely challenging in this match. Moving on to the next game, we head to Sunday football. There's only 2 games on Sunday this week, and the first one is what is going to be our game of the round. It's Sydney hosting Fremantle at the SCG. A lot of talk about the SCG over the last week and about the state of the ground. It's certainly not looking well. It's apparently not playing well at the moment. It's very rough underfoot. So there is concern about that. But in all honesty, Fremantle should be too strong on paper. But Sydney are starting to play a lot better football. They will meet at 1:10 on Sunday. You look at the form of both teams, I guess, and Sydney's form has certainly turned around. Fremantle are flying on the other side of the fence. They're probably in the second best form of the competition, just about. But Sydney 6-9 for the year. They're 2-3 over the last 5 weeks. But if you go since they lost to Adelaide, so they lost to Melbourne and then followed it up with a shocking game against Adelaide at the SCG. Since then, they've turned it around. Granted, their 2 wins in that period were against low-ranked teams, Richmond, Port Adelaide, who are similarly ranked to Sydney at the moment. But they were really competitive against the Bulldogs last week at the SCG. They only lost by 9 points. They were certainly in it up to their eyeballs. Heaney played well. Grundy's in the form of almost his life. His last 6 weeks, I think he's been rated in the All Aussie Rules rating system as elite 5 of those 6 games, where he'd only been elite 1 in the first 9. So that shows how much he's turned his season around. Errol Goulden's back. He was fantastic last week. So there's a lot of positive signs for Sydney, and that is a reason why I think they can genuinely really beat Fremantle here. I know Freo did upset them last year at the SCG, when Sydney were unbeatable just about, but Fremantle went over there and beat them. They've also played well on the road this year. They've beat both Gold Coast and GWS over on the eastern side of the country in the last 5 or 6 weeks. So things are going great for Freo. They're 10-5. Their last 5 wins have all been really good, being Port Adelaide, Gold Coast, North Melbourne, Essendon, St Kilda. Granted, 4 of those are not currently looking like finals teams. You can only play against who you're playing, though, and they are quite convincingly beating these teams. Teams are not scoring much against them. Highest score against them in the last 5 weeks is St Kilda with 69 points. 4 times in the last 5, the teams have been in the 60s, and the other one was 50s. So defensively, Freo are really getting the job done, and that is catapulting them to victory, I think, in a lot of ways. Their offense is not going great. Josh Tracy is absolutely playing well as a key forward. Their other 2 key forwards, especially Jaya Miss, is just underperforming. There's no doubt about it. But what is working for them is obviously their midfield and rucks. Luke Jackson is playing tremendous football. He worked well last week with Sean Darcy. Sarong's always good. Brayshaw's always good. You just got to think that this team is only just starting to show us what they're capable of. They're a similar spot still to where they were last year at this time, and things fell apart over the last month or so of the season. So they'll be thinking about that, I think, and really not wanting to do that again. So I think here we will see them come out and wanting to show what they're fully capable of. If you look at the numbers across the year, Sydney certainly look like they're way outclassed here. But if we just looking at the last few weeks, probably the last 3 games specifically, their numbers have been a lot better. They obviously look better with Errol Goulden out there. Their season is still technically alive. They would have loved to have won last week. That really would have kept them going. This one will be crucial for them. If they lose this, it's probably season over. If they can sneak this win, though, all of a sudden there's still a chance. They'll be sitting there saying, "So you're telling me there's a chance?" But Fremantle should win. But I'm not confident either way. It should be game of the round either way, I think. 5-5 record between these 2 teams over the last 10 matchups. As I said, last year when they met in round 16 in Sydney, Fremantle did win that one by a point. They led the whole way, basically. But they have also played this year, round 2, over at Optus Stadium. And Sydney actually won that game after losing the previous 2 games of the season, their first 2. Fremantle came out of the blocks terribly this year and lost their first couple. So maybe that's not one that we worry about too much. It's a 5-5 record over the last 10. On paper, you've got to think Freo are going to be a massive chance at beating Sydney, but at the same time, this is certainly the one that I'm tossing up the most on who I'm going to tip. Most of the others are pretty self-explanatory. This one, maybe not so much. We move into the final game of the round. It's Adelaide hosting Melbourne. 3:15 kickoff, Australian Eastern Time, so 2:45 local time in Adelaide. 3rd on the ladder, the 14th on the ladder. And as the numbers suggest, you'd have to think Adelaide win this one. Their record's really good over the last 5 games. 4-1, that one loss, a 3-point loss to Hawthorn down in Tassie. Hawthorn don't lose down there, so that's a pretty good result. Also, they've beaten Brisbane in the last 5 weeks by 5 points. They smacked Sydney, they smacked the Eagles, and they smacked Richmond. They're offensively one of the most powerhouse sides in the competition, in all honesty. Defensively, they're pretty solid most of the time. It seems that they struggle a little bit more to score against the good teams, which, I mean, that makes sense, but comparatively speaking to other teams, it probably is more of a gap between their scoring against good teams and bad teams. Like, you look at the 2 finals teams in the last 5 weeks that they've played. They've scored 68 and 44, but defensively they're really good against those teams. Melbourne, they're 1 and 4 over the last 5 games, lost their last 4. It's been a weird season. They started poor, they turned their season around, and then pretty much that St Kilda game is where it was all over. They played St Kilda in Alice Springs and got beaten by 30-odd points. Just wasted opportunities and looked poor. Kicked 7-21 for the game. And since then, that was probably the little nail in the coffin. But a 1-point loss to Collingwood, 25-point loss to Port Adelaide, and then last week losing to Gold Coast. After quarter time, they were pretty good, but they shot themselves in the foot with the start of that game. And it's just really hard to see them being competitive against a really strong Adelaide team in Adelaide. Record over the last 10 is actually 7-3 in favour of Melbourne, but Melbourne are the team that have played finals regularly over the last 10 years, whereas Adelaide pretty much since 2017 or 2016, whatever year it was they played in the grand final, haven't played finals again and haven't looked great. So Melbourne have a great record against Adelaide, but this year has been a completely different Adelaide team, and Melbourne's team has also been dropping off since last time they met, which was all the way back in round 4 last year, when Melbourne was still fancied as a top 4 team basically at that point. I think they won back-to-back weeks in Adelaide, one against Adelaide and one against Port Adelaide. So, yeah, it's just things have changed a lot since then in the demographics of these two teams. Melbourne clearance-wise, contested football-wise, really good, but outside of that, they're really struggling. Especially with ball in hand. Defensively, they're pretty solid. It's just that ability to attack at times has really hurt them. Whereas Adelaide's offense is absolutely outstanding. Their defense is pretty good as well. They don't have too many weaknesses, I don't think, across their best 22. It looks really quite strong. And we thought we'd see this from Adelaide last year. They didn't deliver. This year so far, they really have. They're sitting 3rd on the ladder, and basically fate is in their hands. It's really congested between 2nd and 9th on the ladder, but if you're sitting 3rd, someone's got to take that spot. If you keep winning, you're going to get your chance. So they're certainly in a really good spot to finish top 4 this season, based on what we've seen so far this year. And this is a game where you'd kind of look at it and say, yeah, they should win that one. So that's all 9 games. We've finally got 9 games in a weekend. Yeah, let's jump into our tips. I think that's all we've got left to do. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that noti bell so you don't miss any videos. We put out 2 podcast episodes every single week. One reviewing the week and one previewing the upcoming weekend. Thursdays for the preview episode. Monday mornings. Most weeks, sometimes Monday afternoons for the review episode. Yeah, let's jump into our tips for this weekend. Thursday night, Bulldogs should be way too strong for the Kangaroos. We've got them by 31 points. Friday night, there's a doubleheader. We're going Collingwood by 17 points over Carlton. And we're going GWS by 37 points on the Gold Coast. We head to Saturday football. GWS over West Coast. I don't know if I said West Coast or Gold Coast. Gold Coast will be too strong for the Bombers by 45 points. I've got Geelong by 76 over Richmond. We've then got Brisbane by 22 points over Port Adelaide at the Gabba. Hawthorn, I've gone by 5 points. I think Marvel Stadium makes this a close game. And then we head to Sunday football. And we're going Sydney by 4 points. It'll be a fascinating game to see who starts favourite and who ends up playing well in that one. But we're going Sydney by 4. Close one. And then we're going to finish the round with an Adelaide demolition job of Melbourne by 48 points. That's all 9 tips for us this weekend. Hopefully, we've found your 9 winners. Don't forget to jump in the comments below. Let me know who you think's going to win. Big round of footy coming up. I'm excited for it. Thursday night game I'm not that excited for, but come Friday, certainly Saturday, Sunday, there's a couple good games sprinkled in there. It's probably not the best games of all time, but we'll be watching. Hopefully have some winners. We'll be back Monday with the next episode of the podcast, reviewing all these games. We'll have our MVP votes, we'll have our Brownlow votes, and everything else in between. So don't miss that one. Come back Monday and check it out. I'm Jay. This is the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast, episode number 45 in the books. Enjoy the football this weekend, and I'll catch you on the next one.